Hello, Pastor Stuart here with another midweek Bible study on this rainy Wednesday in Western North Carolina. Perhaps a good day to stay inside and to read and reflect and to think and pray and really give some time studying and meditating on what the Word of God has for us today and how it can convict us and motivate us to be better people. And that's what Proverbs, the book of Proverbs, wants us to do. So we continue reading through different passages in the book of Proverbs, which wants to help us to grow on the inside. Everyone grows on the outside, but not everyone grows or at the same rate on the inside. And Proverbs wants to really help us grow into mature humans and God followers. So we're going to read some more verses around Proverbs that talk about the same topic today. And the topic we are going to read about is justice. And just saying justice makes me want to do the Law and Order chung chung kind of sound, like with all the Law and Orders spin-off shows, whenever they have a dramatic statement or they cut, you hear that chung chung, dung, 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 dung. So we're talking about justice today. And speaking of Law and Order spin-offs, it seems like they're almost too many to remember, too many to count. And thinking about all of the courtroom drama TV shows, all of the cop TV shows, it almost feels like we have kind of an obsession with the criminal law enforcement system in our country. And I think we could easily prove that by naming how many courtroom shows and cop shows there are going back years. So many Laws and Order shows, so many CSI, NCIS, and you could take it all the way back to black and white days, the original Perry Mason. Now we've got the new Perry Mason on HBO. We can go back to detective shows like Columbo, Just One More Thing, sure. We can go back to Dragnet. There's just so many today, and since television and radio was invented, there's something that attracts us about that kind of story, and not just TV and movies, but books, like every John Grisham novel that he ever wrote. It's always like a courtroom drama. Even real life court cases. I mean, think of the O.J. Simpson trial, how big a cultural event that was. And even big court cases today. The combination of real life court cases and TV, and things like The People's Court with Judge Wapner, or if you watch Judge Judy or Judge Joe Brown. And there's more today that I even lose track of. So all that is to say, that kind of entertainment is very prevalent out in the world. And I start to worry that with all of that kind of legal, criminal, law enforcement entertainment, if we consume it so much, we start to assume that in the real world, criminal law enforcement is just as straightforward and entertaining as the TV shows make it out to be. As if in the real world, it's total good guys versus total bad guys, chasing them down to give them the punishment they deserve in about an hour's time. And that's all it takes. But we all know that real life isn't as simple and straightforward and easy as a 1 hour TV drama show. But I do think that subconsciously we've started to assume that the world and the justice system or the act of justice really is that kind of simplified 1 hour, easy to understand kind of setup, like premise, as if justice was only getting revenge on the bad guys, and that all of life was just kind of that simple. But if you think that justice only means getting revenge on bad guys, then that does a huge disservice to what God's call for real, true, godly justice is all about in life. Think of it this way. If there was a system or a community or a country or whatever that their legal system, their justice system was only based on the thinking, people deserve the punishment we want to give them, it would be very flawed, and you would have a lot of problems because it could easily veer off into dangerous territory if the people or person deciding on who deserves what starts to get really skewed. After all, the 9/11 attackers had the same idea. They thought the same thing, that these American people deserve this punishment that we want to give them. So you can't just have as your setup, people deserve the things we want to do to them and think that that is justice. Justice is bigger than that. It's bigger than punishment. There has to be some kind of element of fixing problems, of righting the wrongs, preventing bad things from happening by improving what isn't working and to find what's missing in order to really make life better for everyone. So you prevent problems from happening instead of waiting for bad things to happen and then punishing the people that you think did them. So our verses in Proverbs will help us to expand our understanding of what justice really means by helping us understand God's view of justice. So to start off, we're going to look in Proverbs chapter 8, and then after that, we'll jump into Proverbs chapter 21, and we'll even use a few more Old Testament verses because, like we've seen, some of the Proverbs verses are so short and to the point, they're kind of like the tip of the iceberg of a bigger, deeper, godly truth. So we're going to explore some of the rest of those iceberg truths throughout the Old Testament. But first, we jump into chapter 8 of Proverbs. I'm going to read verses 12 and 20. I, wisdom, dwell together with prudence. I possess knowledge and discretion. I walk in the way of righteousness along the paths of justice. Okay, I wanted to read those two verses from chapter 8. They are from the first section of Proverbs, which has a lot of longer passages that are like poems that are about just kind of one topic. They're like chunks of passage poems about different topics. And they mostly describe what wisdom is like in this first section. And then later in the book, as we've heard in the past few weeks, and we'll jump later in a minute, the later format of Proverbs is kind of like really good brief tips, one after the other, that don't always connect thematically with each other. And a lot of them are about like things you can do, like watch out for this, be careful of this, act this way, don't act this way, be wise, not foolish, etc. Now, this poem in chapter 8 describes what wisdom is like, not just what you should do, but what wisdom is like. So I wanted to read those two verses because they show what wisdom connects with, what wisdom is all about. And as we have been reading through Proverbs, we see that just the idea of wisdom means a lot. And so today we see that it connects to justice. And those two verses connected wisdom with things like prudence, knowledge, discretion, righteousness, and justice. All those things are connected together. So they grow together, they live together. And if we want to grow as people, if we want to grow in wisdom, then it's a full package deal. You can't do like a line item approval process of wisdom. Like, well, I'll take the discretion, but not the justice. No, Wisdom is connected to all these good godly characteristics, and justice, boom, is one of them. So that's why I wanted to read those verses, because Proverbs says justice, seeking it, practicing it, knowing it, is a part of wisdom. Where wisdom is, justice prevails, and vice versa. If there's a situation where there's not a lot of justice, then there's not going to be a lot of wisdom. If you think, well, how could that have happened? That just seems so unjust. Then you can go, oh, there must be some lacking in wisdom. So when we are led by wisdom, then those verses tell us that we will be guided in the paths of righteousness, which should sound familiar from Psalm 23, because those verses say that walking in wisdom means walking in justice, and that will help us to walk in the paths of righteousness. Okay, let me jump to Proverbs 21. First, I'll read verse 3 in Proverbs 21. To do what is right and just is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice. Okay, this is in the later section of Proverbs. So we've got these short verses that are, really like tidbits of good wisdom. And this is a short verse. It's very direct and simple, but the truth that is in it has a huge impact throughout the Bible, and it is a running theme of the Old Testament. Okay, let's see. So what does this verse tell us, first of all? It says, first of all, that doing what is right and just is important to God. Okay, good. We should know that. Acting in justice, doing what is right, that's important to God. Okay, good. Now, second, when it says it's even more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice, when it says sacrifice, and it's in the Old Testament here, that means the Old Testament religious worship practice of sacrificing animals to atone for, to make up for your sins, wrongdoings, and mistakes. So that was part of their religious church services. Whatever bad thing they had done, they had to figure out what kind of animal they would then need to sacrifice in order to receive, they thought, God's forgiveness of that wrong thing. It required certain animals, and the worst thing that you did, the bigger the animal that was required. And they would do that during their worship services, during their religious services. Now, over and over throughout the Old Testament, God would speak through the prophets and was very angry. We'll read some examples in a minute. Very angry when the Israelites would do all the right stuff at church in worship, bringing all the right sacrifices to the letter of the law, but then they would go back out into their real lives and mistreat people, act rudely. They would cheat and steal, bribe. They would exploit their workers. And when that kind of hypocrisy was going on, that when they were in church, they did everything right, brought all the right sacrifices, all the right animals they sacrificed to the Lord. But then they went back out in their real lives and abused people or mistreated them or took advantage of them. God hated it. And we will see that word pop up. Let's look. We'll jump to the book of Amos. Amos chapter 5. Let me put a bookmark in Proverbs 21 so I don't lose my place here. Amos chapter 5, verses 21 through 24. This is God speaking. I despise your religious feasts. I cannot stand your worship assemblies. Even though you bring me burnt offerings and grain offerings like sacrifices, I will not accept them. Though you bring choice fellowship offerings, I will have no regard for them. Away with the noise of your songs and hymns. I will not listen to the music of your harps. But let justice roll on like a river and righteousness like a never failing stream. Do you hear how that explains a little more of Proverbs 21:3, that the Lord wants real life living justice even more than sacrificing animals in worship, saying the right words for the prayers, singing the right words for the hymns. If you're not living and you're not right, if you're not living right and you're not practicing justice, but you still go to church and say all the right words, what does God say? I despise your religious feasts and worship assemblies. That is strong language. That is harsh. That is harsh language. Let's find another example. Let's go over to Isaiah chapter 1, verses 14 through 17. Your religious festivals and your appointed worship feasts, my soul hates. This is God talking through another prophet. They have become a burden to me. I am weary of bearing them. When you spread out your hands in prayer, I will hide my eyes from you. Even if you offer many prayers, I will not listen. Your hands are full of blood. Wash and make yourselves clean. Take your evil deeds out of my sight. Stop doing wrong. Learn to do right. Seek justice. Encourage the oppressed. Defend the cause of the fatherless. Plead the case of the widow. Wow. Again, really harsh words. God saying that the Israelites' worship, my soul hates. Their worship has become a burden. And God says, I'll hide my eyes. I won't listen to your prayers. That is harsh. All because they are not doing right, but they are doing wrong. So how does God say, when God says, learn to do right? What does God say? Seek justice, encourage the oppressed, defend the cause of the fatherless, plead the case of the widow. That is pretty clear. That's pretty definite and direct language from the Lord, directly from the Lord. That helps us understand how big the truth is in Proverbs 21, verse 3, to do what is right and just is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice. Isn't that remarkable? And I don't know about you, but that idea and those verses, I didn't hear those verses a lot when I was growing up. And I grew up going to church twice on Sunday and every Wednesday and a lot of weeks in between, all the time. Whenever the doors were open, we were in church. And I don't remember those verses being preached on or taught very often. What about you? It makes me kind of wonder why. Why would churches not want to spend time reading Bible verses where God hates worship services from people who aren't encouraging the oppressed and practicing real holy justice in the world? That's very convicting. I know those verses from Amos and Isaiah that we read aren't as cheery, happy, warm, fuzzy, yay, everything's fine, everything is awesome. Those verses weren't that kind of idea, but they were real and they were direct language from the Lord about what our worship should and should not be. So it makes me wonder, if God hates the worship services from people who are not encouraging the oppressed and practicing justice in the world, maybe we need some church closures for a while. Last year, most every church closed down for health reasons during the pandemic, but maybe even normal times. Maybe churches, every now and then when they need to, should put a sign up on their door that says, closed until we start practicing justice. Because that's what God would want. God says, I hate hearing your songs. I'm not going to listen to your prayers, because in real life, you're taking advantage of people. You're not practicing justice. You're not encouraging the oppressed. You're not defending the cause of the orphan and advocating for the widow. So wouldn't that be something if you were driving down or walked down a street and you saw a church sign that says closed until we start practicing justice? That's what God clearly and directly said. Very convicting. Very, very convicting. Now, to close, I do want to give a blessing verse to read from chapter 21 as we close. And it's a good reminder that we shouldn't let ourselves be guilt-tripped into doing the right thing or practicing justice. I don't want to guilt-trip anyone or to shame anyone into acting right. I don't believe in that. I don't think that's the right way that people should improve their lives and attitude. But Proverbs 21:21 is a good reminder that we shouldn't just practice justice because it's the right thing to do to help others. We shouldn't practice justice only because it is what God wants us to do. Now, those are really good reasons. You really shouldn't need any more good reasons than that. But Proverbs 21:21 says that practicing justice is also the best thing to do for our own selves. And we've seen that theme throughout our Proverbs study. So let me close with this. The person who pursues righteousness and love finds life, prosperity, and honor. That sounds pretty good. To find life, prosperity, and honor. So remember that again, like we've been reading, it's in our own best interests to grow and live as mature God followers in the world. And we've seen today that means following God's demand for justice. And there's even more verses in Proverbs about that. So we'll read some more next week. And we've got about 3 more weeks or so of our Proverbs study. And I've been really enjoying it. So I look forward to continuing our reading next week. So be blessed, seek righteousness, let justice roll on like an ever-flowing stream. And may you feel love, prosperity, and honor as a result. See you next week.